Imagine cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Ottawa being bombed, asking how Canadians would feel if the iconic CN Tower was hit by Russian bombs. Addressing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as "Dear Justin," he called on the PM to imagine children in this country being killed, kindergartens being bombed. Zelenskyy received a lengthy standing ovation. And joining us with reaction to this emotional address and the latest developments in the Ukraine-Russia war is retired Major General David Fraser and former Canadian ambassador to Russia, Jeremy Kinsman. Good to see both of you. Thanks so much for your time. General Fraser, first, I want to hear about what you thought about the Ukrainian president's special address today. There was certainly a lot of emotion there.
Well, Lena, I watched it and I was absolutely moved by the emotions, but by the plea and looking through a president's eyes and thinking that I'm actually on the ground watching what Ukrainian civilians are facing. It's absolutely heart-wrenching. Churchillian, this man has demonstrated leadership by example by not running. He has stood his ground. He has stood Putin down. And he is stopping one of the best trained armies in the world right now. And he's just done a remarkable job. But we've got to balance the emotions from the actual decision. And the question is, what more can Canada do? An awful lot. He is dealing with a bully, and we've just got to hammer all the sanctions against that bully and to do harm and damage to his economy to get his attention to the political and diplomatic table to find a settlement to this war.
Yeah, Zelenskyy dealing with a bully, that's pretty powerful. Mr. Kinsman, what did you think? I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, he's a great performer. I mean, he seems like a very authentic guy. Somebody made the joke, you know, if you're going to run a war, get it run by a TV production team, because, boy, he really appeals to hearts and to minds. I don't think he's going to get a no-fly zone, of course. General Fraser has spoken about that frequently, and I totally agree with him that it's an escalating risk for a little benefit. But he's going to get the goodwill, not just of Canada. He's speaking tomorrow to the American Congress, to, honestly, the whole, what we used to call the free world, and much of the rest of the world. And that's going to stand Ukraine in great stead. Ukraine's going to survive. They're not going to push the Russians out. They're going to, you know, fight them to a draw, which is unexpected and heroic. And it's very, very important because it's a big win for Ukraine. A draw is not a win for Vladimir Putin. We'll see how he spins it to try and back away. But that, I think, at the end of the day, and talks are going on, is what is going to happen. We've got to give them more stuff. More anti-aircraft batteries, absolutely, no question about it. We got to help them deal with what they got to face. But I think they're going to come through.
Interesting. General Fraser, please close the sky. That's something Ukraine's president called for today. That's something the Ukrainian people have practically been begging for. It is also something NATO has refused to do, saying it could lead to escalated tensions. It could lead to a full-fledged war. Mr. Kinsman just said it's escalating risk for a little benefit. Do you see it the same way?
I do. And it really, this is, you know, we've got to separate the emotion from the reality. Ukraine has actually stopped this army and is doing a great job with the tools that it has right now. And the one thing we cannot forget about is we got to think about what Putin has done in the past. Everything that Putin has ever threatened with, he's followed through with. And so that we've got to take it seriously that the potential that this war goes out of control, and a no-fly zone means that we're going to attack Russia mainland. We're going to attack Russian troops. And it's, you know, where does it end? And this is where, in fact, we can actually support Ukraine, and I agree. And Ukraine today indicated that they may not join NATO, which is exactly the first step that we're looking for that might appease Putin and give him a way out without him having to annihilate the rest of the country. I agree. Ukraine's not going to die. It's not going to die. It will live on. And Zelensky's made sure of that, and every Ukrainian has made sure of that, too.
So I'm hearing both of you say that Ukraine will survive, that it will not die. What do you make, then, of President Zelenskyy saying millions of people will die, and the West is just watching and not imposing this no-fly zone? What do you make of that argument?
Lena, one person who dies is one person too many, and people will die, and they are dying, and it's heartbreaking and it's awful. War is hell, and that's why the war's got to be stopped. And every means of persuasion, of leverage, of pressure, even of economic coercion has got to be brought to bear on Russia, and is being brought to bear, and incidentally, also indirectly on China, to persuade them to back off a tacit kind of approval of what Putin is doing. I think what Putin is doing is more than they bargained for, to tell you the truth. So I think, look, we may hopefully be heading into some kind of an end game. It is absolutely terrible what's happening. There's no question about that. And I understand Zelensky's performance, his projection, his character, his bravery represent those of his people, and it's just terrific. And we're full right behind him. But as General Fraser says, you got to measure the benefits against the costs. The big benefit here is going to be a stronger Ukraine coming out of this.
Okay, General Fraser, I want to talk to you about sanctions. Canada slapping new sanctions against another 15 Russian elites today. Are these sanctions hurting Russia? Are they hurting Vladimir Putin? Does he care about sanctions? And how do we know if they're actually effective?
Well, just take a look that the Russian stock market hasn't opened up for 3 weeks. Look at the 400 companies around the world who have stopped doing business with Russia. These sanctions are having an effect over and above anything we've ever seen in history. Over 5,000 sanctions. It's the most sanctioned country in the world. This is the West's aim of helping Ukraine stop this war. So, as much as President Zelensky was looking for more, the West is not being idle. We're all in on this, and the sanctions is really affecting Russia and the Russian people. And just look at that Russian reporter that got arrested for trying to stop the war. We're having a positive effect, and we're right there with Zelensky and every Ukrainian trying to help them resolve this, and we will by working together.
Mr. Kinsman, is Russia losing this war? I mean, Vladimir Putin is isolated by most of the world. We're talking about these sanctions are getting more severe, and Kyiv still belongs to Ukraine.
Yeah, no, I look, winning and losing, these are funny words. So it's very hard to quantify. He is not winning the war. He is making progress slowly, but it's very bloody progress. It's not what he expected. The costs are much higher than he expected. And even though he's, by impulse and by exercise of power, pretty much a dictator, which he's consolidated in the last week, it's virtually a military police society right now. He still has to pay attention to what people think. And what people are beginning to think, and as General Fraser says, what some of these communicated social and business sanctions are making them think, they're beginning to feel the shame. When that shifts from pride to shame, that means he's in big trouble. He doesn't have much of a nose for public opinion living in his bubble as he does, but he, I think, has got enough of a nose to smell that from far.
And shame is a powerful emotion. General Fraser, I want to talk to you about how this could possibly end. Experts are saying Russians have a lot of power in this equation. Could Russians overthrow or replace Vladimir Putin? And what would it take to get there?
Well, I'm not going to say that Putin is going to be overthrown. He is a survivor. He's been a chess player. He's got a great control and power in Russia. But what I think his position has been weakened by this situation. And I think that Russians who have for the last 10 to 20 years lived a very prosperous lifestyle, and when that is gone, it's going to pose a lot of pressure on him to rebuild and to focus on solidifying his position. So I just think we have a weaker Russia at the end of this. In a perverse way, it actually makes the West a little bit safer because Russia has just proven that it cannot go after the Baltic states and other countries because it can't even get through Ukraine because the Ukrainian, with only a third of the fighting force, is actually putting up a better fight than all the Russian army put together.
Okay, a weaker Russia, stronger Ukraine. That's interesting. Mr. Kinsman, I'll ask you the same question. You think we're getting closer to the end game here. How do you think this ends? Do you have any sense of optimism about these so-called peace talks?
Well, I have some optimism, Lena. Nobody's got the predictions right on this. I mean, nobody thought, very few people thought Putin would actually try to invade the whole country, and how it ends is going to have to be first with a ceasefire, with conditions, and then it's going to have to end with some kind of a negotiated settlement of the things that are at dispute. I think General Fraser just said that President Zelenskyy has withdrawn the acute desire to join NATO. He wants to see NATO's sovereignty and democracy and independence supported, and that is going to be the case. He has won that case with the rest of the world. But how it's going to end and when it's going to end, when is Putin going to resist his black belt judo fighter's instinct to double down? I don't know. I hope it comes soon. I hope somebody in his entourage is beginning to tell him the truth.
Okay, this has been a fascinating conversation. Major General David Fraser and Jeremy Kinsman, we're so grateful for your time tonight. Thank you.